And we're going to finish up the third chapter of The Key to the Indian. Henri's father was not able to sleep at all reading the account of Jessica Charlotte. He discovered that Henri had the figure of Jessica Charlotte, so she could be brought to the future, but he starts to tell Henri the story of when Henri's mother saw a ghost at Lottie's grave, Jessica Charlotte's niece's grave, and this is important because Henri's father thinks that there might be a supernatural gift being passed down to members of the family. So, we've pretty much determined this ghost is the ghost of Jessica Charlotte, and let us pick up from where the last paragraph cut off. She took a step forward nearer to the grave, looking all the time at the young girl standing on the other side of it. She put her hand, it was wearing a long black glove, on the shoulder of the bent old woman busy with the flowers, who didn't seem to notice. She patted her gently. She smiled a sad, sad smile at the young girl who was going to be Henri's mother, and she nodded tenderly down at the old lady as if to say, "See how old she is? You must take care of her now." Maybe she even did say it, and then suddenly she wasn't there anymore. Henri's father was talking. He was describing the scene just as Henri saw it in his head. Which came first, what Henri saw or what his dad said? When his dad finished, there was a silence, and then Henri said in a choked voice, "Mum must have felt awful." "About seeing the ghost?" "No, about the time she hadn't taken her gran to the cemetery. About the ghost needing to come and remind her to take care of Maria." "Do you think the ghost was Jessica Charlotte?" "Of course it was," said Henri simply. "You sound sure." "I am." "Henri, how do you know that?" "Well, it's not because I'm magic, it's just I've got a very good imagination, and sometimes it just tells me things." His father looked at him, and Henri heard what he had just said. Heard it as his father must have, as proof that Henri had a bit of Jessica Charlotte's gift. They talked it all over very carefully before anyone else in the house woke up. The sun was well clear of Peacock Hill, and streaming into the room before they heard the others beginning to stir and had to stop. Henri, though of course he wanted to see Jessica Charlotte again, and thought it very possible that she would have the ability to make them another magic key, one that would work in the car, was very doubtful just the same about his dad's plan. There was nothing in the account about her making a second-time journey. The first one, when she'd visited Henri and Patrick and sung them a music-hall song, was hinted at in her diary, but nothing after that. Surely if she had been brought a second time and asked to make another key, she would have remembered it, especially so close after the first time. Henri's father was very interested in the time question. "Does it work the same at both ends?" "Yes." "That's to say, if a week has passed here, a week has passed for the people in the past." "That's right. I know, because when Little Bear came this last time, his baby was about a year old, and it was a year here since he was born. Anyway, I knew it before." "So let's work this out. How many days is it since Jessica Charlotte came?" Henri thought about it. A week had passed between seeing her and the day his dad had found the figures and discovered the secret, and 3 days more had passed since then. 10 days. 10 days, his dad was looking at the notebook. Right. So after she came here... No, it wasn't. Let me see. She made the key. That was the day of the parade, the day she said goodbye to Lottie, Armistice Day, November 11th, 1918. The next day, she went back to Maria's to say goodbye, pretending she was going abroad. And that was the day she stole the earrings. So that's one day. Then, she writes, a week went by, and at the end of that week she got the news that little Lottie had been accused of stealing the earrings and had run out of the house, and her father, Matthew, ran after her and got run over and killed. And that's where her part of the account ends. Well, there is a bit more. Not that you can read. When she got to writing that part all those years later, when she was on her deathbed, he looked up and looked around. "Maybe in this very room, Henri." "No, it was Guillaume's room." "How do you know?" "I just..." He stopped suddenly. He was beginning to feel creepy about this. He did just know, he was certain, but how? His father took a deep breath and went on. "Okay, anyway, When she was trying to write the last of the account, she became too ill and weak, and had to call in her son, Frederick, to finish it. This last page of her writing, he pointed to faded, scrawny words that you could hardly make out, indicates to me that she was not only very ill, but by the time she came to write it, but she was writing about a time when she was almost crazy. She felt Matthew had died because of her, that Lottie had been falsely accused, that more terrible things were going to happen because of what she'd done. Now, Henri, if you've got a bit of her gift, use it. Imagine her as she was, at this moment, 10 days after the theft of the earrings, 3 days after she found out about Matthew's death. Henri didn't have to imagine very hard. He'd been through this already, when he had read this part of the account. He had almost seemed to be suffering with Jessica Charlotte in this awful crisis in her life. He had felt her guilt, her horror, her remorse. He didn't want to experience that again, or even a shadow of it. It was a terrible thought that down through the layers of time, she might still be going through that. If they brought her, they would have to see her going through it. She's right in the middle of it. Dad, her awful time. A new appalling thought struck him. He took the notebook away from his father, peered closely at the semi-intelligible words. Alone, wandering, despair, river, coward, never. He suddenly and shockingly understood the meaning behind the word river and the word that followed it. Dad! She tried to drown herself! What? I'm sure of it. Why didn't I notice before? I was so disappointed that the account had stopped, thinking I'd never learn the secret of the magic now. I didn't read into it like I did the rest. Alone, wandering, river, coward. Don't you see? She was in such a state she wanted to throw herself into the Thames, and maybe she couldn't because she was too afraid. Or maybe she was too much of a coward to go on living. And that's what's going on right now, back in her time. Oh, Dad! He exclaimed, forgetting to be quiet, staring at his father across the notebook. We're not going to bring her now, are we? If we want her to make us the key to go back and help Little Bear, his father said slowly, we'll have to. And that's the end of chapter 3.